Welcome to the Resilience Reset. We are going to talk about public speaking. And if you love it, fantastic. Add your ideas and comments and insights into the chat box so others can, because most people loathe it. Most people are afraid of it. Most people do not want to do it, let alone, like I do it for a living, right? And I love it. But it wasn't always that way. In actual fact, I was a horrible public speaker. Not only did I not have talent, I was scared, and scared in a big way. I remember well into my professional speaking career, I would be in Toronto at a big hotel and about to go on stage, and I'd be in the bathroom because, my bladder was like in nerves mode, and like texting my mom and my brother saying like, what am I doing? Like, I don't know what I'm going to say. I'd go blank. I get all in this, everything that happens when you have all the negative stress, right? So if you do not like public speaking, I feel you, because I've been there. And because I've been there, I can also tell you that there absolutely is a way to overcome it. And I'm going to share with you a few of those tips and tricks that I used in order to do that. So first of all, I'd love to hear from you in the chat. Like, do you love public speaking? Is it your juju? Or is it something that you loathe? Let me know. But let's talk, I did a post about this, so forgive me. I'm just going to go from the post because I think it really, and I'm just going to expand on the piece of the puzzle that I've already shared, but I think that they really, it's how I overcame my fear of public speaking. And so the first thing is, I remember when I wrote my book called From Business Cards to Business Relationships, Personal Branding and Profitable Networking Made Easy. One of the things, because I was afraid of networking, I had a framework which was really, for me at the time, very powerful. It still makes sense today, where if you could change your perspective, you would practice and prepare, right? So perspective, preparation, and practice. Those three things ultimately ended up making me feel very comfortable speaking in public and very comfortable networking. So those are the three things. So I think it's best to unpack that. And so let's start with perspective. So those nerves, those things that are when you're before you're about to go on stage and your brain goes, blank, at least that's what happened for me. Your bladder's overactive, you're nervous, your stomach is like got butterflies, you can't eat, all of those pieces of the puzzle, that anxiety, it is the same physiological response of being excited. And so one of the things I did was switch the narrative, because if your story is very much like, oh my God, I'm so nervous, I can't believe it, what am I going to say? What if I forget my lines? What if I don't, whatever, right? Then your body is going to respond. That storyline is going to make it feel even harder, and it's going to make it feel very negative and very anxiety producing. However, if you change, and by the way, it's okay if it's a lie. This is the one time lies are all right. Just tell yourself the story that makes sense. If you say something like, you know what, I'm super excited to be able to serve these people. There's someone in the audience who needs to hear what I have to say. And I often, especially if I feel intimidated in any way by an audience, that's what I think of. I think of who's the one person in that audience who desperately needs what I have to say. Who's the person who is so on the cusp of burnout that their answer is just going to be quit the job and give up on their career goals because they just can't hack it anymore. Who is that person who I can reach and shift how they think so that tomorrow they're going to feel more confident and they're going to get out of that destructive stress cycle? So for me, that has been really, really, really helpful, is just managing the narrative around the speaking. And, I hear this a lot when people say, oh, you know what, I've got to, a speech next week, I'm so nervous. Like, it's a week in advance and they're already, rehearsing for failure, and for nerves. And so I suggest that we shift that narrative. Now, another really big thing, I think back to the times when I was so nervous if you actually unpack the narrative of being nervous to speak in public, it will go something like this. What if I say something stupid? What if I forget what I'm supposed to say? What if I am, I don't look good on stage? What if I fall off the stage? What if I say something that I regret later? And those things are very, very common because I know I used to say them, and other people who I've talked to have often said those things. And they all have something in common. What if I screw up? And the thing is that the second that you get on the stage, the second that you have the permission and the privilege to be behind a microphone and have an audience listening, that's the moment that it is no longer about you. It is about your audience. And so the message comes through you, but you're only the vehicle to get the message that the audience needs to hear. And so for me, when I switched my thinking to realize all of those questions were about me, and when I started asking the question, what do I want my audience to think, do, and feel after having heard me speak, that's when the magic started to happen. That's when I could go out and be really, really confident on stage and not feel self-conscious, because that self-consciousness is going to keep you from, it's very I-focused, and it's going to keep you from genuinely serving your audience. Okay, so that is good. So when it's there, now you got to do all the work in advance, right? So figure out the outfit that's going to work. But if the outfit doesn't look good once you're on stage, nothing you can do about it anyway, right? If you have little quirks or things that you do, like say or ah, or I tend to pause a lot when I'm on stage because I'm like thinking about what I'm going to say next or just waiting for it to come out. And so, you've got to just be aware of those things so that you can mitigate them, but do the work to mitigate them in advance. Okay. And, to the point of when you speak, like when you get behind that microphone, that is such a privilege. And I think sometimes people want to be speakers or they have to speak. So who was I talking to last week? Well, it doesn't matter. I wouldn't tell you the person's name anyway. But they're like, I'm really, now that we're coming out of COVID and people are coming back into the meeting rooms and I'm like, I have to get up and talk. I'm really nervous. Whereas before I was kind of in the groove with it. And I think this is going to happen because we're out of practice. And so you want to be figuring out how can you, embrace that opportunity instead of dreading it. Be like, oh my gosh, I get the microphone, which means I get to share some of my brilliance, whatever it is up there in your head. You have an opportunity to influence the people in the room, whether it be to buy your product, whether it be to, adopt your way of thinking or to inspire them. Doesn't matter. The point is that opportunity is sacred. And so you really want to have a lot of respect for that. And that's why I think the self-consciousness is actually doing you a disservice to serving the people who are listening to you speak, which is pretty kind of cool. Okay, so we've got the perspective. That's my shift on the perspective. Now you want to do the preparation. And so now I do these riffs, like off the cuff, every 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday. Now, if somebody were paying me to speak, I wouldn't just show up and do a riff, right? I would have a sense of what I need to get done. So I have an outline. I can even show you my outline if you'd like. Let me find it in my stack of papers. Roll over my floor because I have a keynote tomorrow morning. And so it is going with me to Toronto. Oh, no, not Toronto. Where am I going to be? I am going to be in London. Yeah. Anyway, so here is my speech. Now, some people love to have it memorized and word for word. Not me. I need to know what are the stories I'm going to share, what are the key points I'm going to make, and then I know all the pieces of the puzzle that I'm going to fill in around that. Okay. Oh, look, we've got some comments here that I didn't bring up. Dan, oh my gosh, so good to have you here. Yes, reframing, because our brain doesn't understand sarcasm, right? So what we tell it, it will decide is true. What an awesome shift in perspective. Yeah, I suspect that was not about me. It's about them. Yeah. Awesome. So the preparation, you want to know where you're going to go. Now, this is my main, for my main roller coaster speech. Okay, I have like 2 keys speeches. And the thing is, so what I'm going to do now for this audience tomorrow morning is I'm actually going to rewrite this out because I might add in different little vignettes or comments or things that I need to add for it. But if you do the prep and you know exactly what you're going to cover before you go into the speech, it makes you a lot more confident. And I think for a long time, what I did was I would just kind of get up there and wing it. Like I had an idea, but I didn't really know. And so then it added this whole level of, oh my God, what am I going to say? And I got to tell you, like Thursday, I spoke for a group and I looked at my piece of paper twice. So like, I don't use notes per se, but I had it off to the side because, I just sort of generally put it on a topper or on the floor or something, just so I can go over and reference it. Like if I don't remember exactly where I'm going in the transition, I want to stay on track. No big deal. Nobody's going to judge you on that, right? That totally works. But I think one of the biggest things in the preparation, and I've already said it once, but it bears repeating, is you want to know what is the outcome for your audience. What do you want them to think, to feel, and to do after listening to you? And if you don't have that dialed in, if you don't have that so clear, then how can you even build the speech that you're going to give? And so this is why I start with that question before every talk. Literally every talk, I write down, what do I want them to think, feel, and do? And often it's the exact same thing. Doesn't matter. I want to do it so I'm set in and focusing on the audience. So for example, tomorrow I am speaking for for a group of people, about 100 people, 120, I think they have. And I've got my goals for them, right? And so that's what I'm going to that's how I start every speech. And so even if you had to do a 3-minute presentation, okay, or you just have to introduce yourself at a networking event and you're feeling nervous, just scribble down on a piece of paper, what do you want to think, feel, and do? And, if you're at a networking group, maybe it's you want them to think of you when they need your service. Or if they, and then you want them to feel like you're approachable and an expert and somebody who they can ask a question to. And maybe you want them to set up a meeting with you, right? So that's helpful because it could be a call to action. Now, for me, my do is often, I want them to implement one of my core concepts, right? So I'll say like my do is, my think would be that they have an opportunity. They don't need to quit their job in order to feel less stressed, that there is possibilities. That's what I want them to think. I want them to feel hopeful that there is another way, and that they, not only that they can implement it, right? That they can do it. And then do, when they get into that feeling of overwhelmed or feeling stressed, I want them to turn to the programs that I've shared with them. So that would be an example of think, feel, do, and how it work out in my world. The other thing with the preparation is know your material. Now, I created my concepts. Okay. I created them through blood, sweat, tears, and writing and thinking. And I don't want to use the word obsessing because that sounds really negative, but definitely I've worked hard on my materials. And the beauty of that is I know them so well. Now, not always do I know them that well. So let's say if I'm leading a panel discussion and I'm in an industry that I don't know at all, then I've got to know enough going in from the preparation perspective that I don't have to like find concepts on stage. Does that make sense? So it's like, okay, whatever the pieces that you need to know about, know it. You don't have to know it as well that you want to write a book over it, but have a very clear understanding of what you're going to share and what the content is. All right, so that's it. So perspective, preparation. Now we're going to talk about practice. And you can practice in the car, you can practice in front of the mirror, you can practice, wherever you can to get the reps in. Practice in front of teddy bears. Yeah, I know I have friends who used to practice their speeches and lined up in front of their kids' toys, like whatever. The key is you don't want to be giving the speech for the first time when you're in front of an audience. And this goes for not just big speeches, but also for your, if you need to introduce yourself at a networking event, like have some times where you practice a bit so that it feels really natural and rolls off your tongue. And so, it may be if you choose that you want to get over your fear of public speaking, maybe you join in Toastmasters. Now, Toastmasters is fantastic for giving you the reps. Not fantastic necessarily if you want to get paid to speak and using that structure as a paid speaker. There's lots of debate to be had around that, and there are different ways that a successful speech can be done. So that's not always the case, but sometimes. But I think it's a great way to get reps in and to get over your fear of public speaking. Another thing is you could volunteer to take a leadership role inside an organization that you're a part of. And what that can do is that can force you behind the microphone, right? And that's what happened to me before I had a public speaking business. I took on roles that required me to show up and speak and be in front of a camera. Okay, if it was in the media or if it was on stage as an MC or whatever, I would volunteer. And even though I hated doing it, I knew that if I did it enough, at some point I would get over my fear of public speaking. And now here I am. Not that I don't get that, but I call it excitement and I get really jujued and jazzed about it. All right, so you've got the reps, and it might be like going to the Rotary clubs, going to the Kiwanis Club, going to all those different service clubs, going to your local school, the PTA meeting and standing up and sharing. Like, you've got to get the reps in. And if you can't find an audience, create your own, which, by the way, is what I've done, right? Showing up here 4 days a week is part of that, is to get the reps in. So that now that I'm speaking again and out at conferences and doing my virtual, I've got such a comfort level. It's not like I spent the entire summer or the spring when we were back in lockdown, if you remember that time, doing nothing, right? Like when the volume of speaking engagements wasn't there, I was online sharing, trying to get more comfortable with talking into a camera and connecting with people across the lens, right? So if you can't find the opportunities, make the opportunities. Glenn is saying the Dale Carnegie training. Absolutely. And I think actually in London, most cities would have the Dale Carnegie training available. Great insight. Great idea. All right. So I think those are the big things. Like, you got to get the reps in. You got to practice. You got to know what you're going to talk about. Be audience focused. And then the hardest thing, I think, for any speaker, I don't know, maybe not. I just find it hard. Not so much anymore, but I'll tell you a little story. So anyway, the thing is to watch your videos. So every time I speak, I record it. Whether it's going into a demo video or not, I record the speech. And then I force myself to watch it. Now, I once did a talk. So you got to remember, back then I was really nervous, and I would get, so I'd be nervous going in. I'd get up on stage 2 or 3 minutes in, I'd start to get into the groove, and then I would speak, and then I would get off the stage, and I would have like all the juju and the positive feelings of everybody around. And then I'd get in my car and I'd have this, oh no, what did I say? Because I was so, like, I couldn't remember what I had said on stage. And then I would assume that I was awful. Right? That was it. I mean, the fact that people were hiring me was not part of the equation, but that was always my thinking. And I remember I did a talk for the Canadian Marketing Association, and I had it recorded. I got a raw video of it. And I was so embarrassed and thought I'd done such a horrific job that I actually didn't watch it for 4 months, because that's how horrified I was. And the truth is, I watched it and it wasn't actually that bad. Right? It was fine. But yeah. Toastmasters is a great way to get comfortable and immediate feedback. Exactly. Right? Like every way that we can get the reps in is really helpful, and finding the way that's going to work for you. And I agree. That's what Toastmasters is really, really great for sure. So watching the videos, you can see it, knowing, and looking at it objectively and not through a cruel eye, from a compassionately curious eye of how can I become a better speaker? Because for us as speakers, we have to learn to evolve. We need to learn how to connect with the audience, and we're not going to connect with everybody. That's just how it works. But we want to do the best that we can show up as our absolute best, which brings me to the next point. Stop comparing yourself to other speakers. I was keynoting a little while ago at a conference, and I came up to another, one of the other speakers, and she's like, "Oh my God, I watched your speech." And she's like, "All I'm thinking is I don't want to follow her." And I'm like, no, because I'm done. I did my thing. I did the Allie thing. Now it's your time to shine and be authentically you. And you're fantastic. And then I was thinking about how many times have I been at a conference and Seth Godin or Brene Brown are up on the main stage, and I'm in one of the concurrent sessions, and I'm like, and it's just absolutely no good. Nothing. Absolutely no value comparing ourselves to other people. And so I know that's easier said than done, but really just getting compassionately curious. And when you are feeling intimidated by someone, ask yourself, what do I see in them that I want for myself? And what do I see in them that, they don't have that I have? And knowing what your value is and how you show up, right? You're never going to get a fully polished speech. You're going to get Allie when you see me on a stage, right? I'm going to talk through some stories. I'll probably say something a little bit off the cuff that hopefully won't be inappropriate, but yeah, not if I'm getting paid. I don't think I would. I think I'm past that point, but we want to be who we are, right? I know one of the things that's going to happen with me on stage is I'm going to laugh at my own jokes. Because I do that, because I think I'm funny. I don't know. It happens anyway. And then I think the other thing is that if the big goal, for me, I one day want to be on the stadiums, right? The 20,000 person audience, the big rallies, that's where I ultimately want to get to. But, in the meantime, doing 150 people or 120 or 300 or 700 or 1,000 is what a privilege. And so we want to show up when we have 20 people in the room the same way that we want to show up when we have 20,000 people in the room, with the same level of respect and focus on serving the audience. Because I don't think that if you can't nail, is that double negative? Starting over, new sentence. If you can't master the 20-person room, you're never going to have the privilege of the 20,000 person room or anything in between. And so I think it's about growing. It's about constantly evolving and pushing ourselves to become better and better and better, and always focused on serving the end user. Who's that, who's got the bums in seats? Who is so desperate for your information or just interested and might take one little tidbit out of what you have to say? And and let's just, before I close up, actually I got to get on the highway. I want to say this. In those moments when my voice was cracking, because I was nervous speaking, and the neck and the face were bright red and on fire, I could feel the energy of embarrassment and fear coming out to the microphone in my hand. I think one of the things I learned to do, and I how I do not like this advice, but I'm going to tell you, is you've got to get your breath. And even if it's about taking a pause and just be pulling it down into the diaphragm to give yourself a second to settle, it's one of the points in time when having your breath is so critically important. And if you can't catch your breath, then you've got to speak faster and push your breath down so your voice doesn't crack. I learned that too. And I'm just going to think back to that time where and I think the biggest thing that can hurt you is when you get in your head. Because then I would start having this conversation in my head, like, oh my God, you're forgetting what you're supposed to say, or that wasn't the way you were supposed to say it. And then I was saying stuff out this way, but it wasn't actually coming out the right way. Like, it was this whole thing. And so now I'm more like, whatever's coming out is what's coming out, right? And you kind of, as a speaker, you have to have a little bit of an internal dialogue going on, but you don't want it to be so loud that it's overshadowing the moment of what you're trying to say. Because the things you need to be looking for are like, what's the pacing? Am I, do I need to slow down or speed up, or who's engaged, who's not engaged? Am I serving the entire room? Am I speaking into the direct panel? Like, there's a lot of back that's happening in your mind. And the thing that shouldn't be happening in your mind is, am I going to screw this up? Am I saying something stupid? Am I, like that, all that self-conscious stuff that we talked about at the very beginning. So anyway, I hope that really helped you. And if you are just growing and having to get pushed into speaking more and more, then I'm going to challenge you to just keep it on, keep doing it. And, with time, with the right perspective, with the right, preparation and the right practice, you will eventually learn to love speaking just like I do. Yeah, such a privilege. In which case, I gotta go. Like I said, I have a keynote tomorrow morning, and I'm going to Studio 180 to do that. And then I'm working with a client in the afternoon. And also, hey, I've got a great guest tomorrow on tomorrow's show. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate that. It is awesome to see you too. I wish I could see you on the other side of the camera. My friend Jill Ellis Worthington is going to be talking with us tomorrow about upping your business communication skills. And so we may end up talking about speaking, the speeches, like actually structuring that speech. She has some great content there about blogging, about the importance of grammar, about getting media, PR. I am going to encourage you, if you are interested in any of those 5 topics, that you come to tomorrow's show live, because she and I will cover and answer any of your questions. She's an incredible resource, someone who I've hired over the years, someone who I've worked with over the years, and I just have a ton of respect for her and super excited that she's coming on the show. So I hope you will join. And Glenn, you're so welcome, and thank you. I appreciate it, and awesome to have you here. All right, on that note, I will see you tomorrow, and may you stress less, do more, and be happier. Until next time.